Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Delegate Corner. I'm your host, Sinkas, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with Krzysztof Urbański. Krzysztof is the governance lead of L2BEAT, a delegate, and a member of the Grants Council. He comes from an open source software background, and he has a lot of experience in grants and public goods funding. Today's episode is kind of special because between the first time I messaged Krzysztof to be on the show and now that we're recording it, I actually joined L2BEAT to work alongside with him in governance. Nevertheless, he has a lot of insights to share, and I definitely couldn't go without including him in the show. So let's dive into what he has to say. Hello, Krzysztof, and welcome to Delegate Corner. Glad to have you on the show.
GM, thanks for having me.
Absolutely amazing to be discussing here. All right, so just take it away and give us some brief introduction to yourself. I've known you for some time now, but please let's get the audience familiar with you.
Yeah, so I'm working in IT for like more than 20 years now. Um, like my crypto story actually begins around 20 years from now with free software. I've been quite active in the free software industry in the open culture movement. I treat myself as an activist. And then when I realized that crypto is like the continuation of this topic, I switched there. And right now I'm working at L2BEAT as a governance lead, together with you, by the way. And yeah, like that's my short introduction.
All right, so from free software to crypto, I think that's kind of like a natural progression, as you also said. So apart from like governance, which I think is an obvious thing that you're into, what are some other things in crypto that make you tick? Like, are you at all interested in DeFi, the tech behind it, NFTs? What's your thing?
Well, the thing that I'm mostly into everything crypto. So any piece of this technology excites me in some way. In terms of DeFi, I'm a huge deliver for RWAs. Like I think that this will be huge in the future, and that also connects for me with NFTs. Like I believe that like NFTs will have their own another round of popularity. Yeah, I absolutely look forward to what happens in social and gaming, especially. There is such a huge potential there in terms of infrastructure. So, like infrastructure, meaning that the crypto is the infrastructure that will unleash, uh, you know, enormous amounts of creativity if it's being used simply by some proper devs.
Hmm. Yeah, cool points, and I definitely agree, especially on the gaming part. All right, and what was the thing that brought you to Optimism? Was it just getting involved with its governance, or was it before then?
Well, honestly, L2BEAT brought me to Optimism, but like in DAO for DAOs in general, like the DAO brought me to crypto. That was the thing that actually was the first time when I realized that crypto is actually something super interesting. I've been following Bitcoin from the very early days because my friend was experimenting a lot with Bitcoin network, and I wasn't convinced. Like I understood that it's interesting. I saw the potential, but like it wasn't that interesting for me to actually get involved. But the first time I've heard about the DAO, which was like probably a month before the collapse, like I it clicked for me. Like I realized, hey, this is huge. Like because this allows not just to it's not just a feature and some interesting aspect of the technology, but this actually unleashes, you know, a lot of potential applications in terms of social coordination and decision making, all the like politics, all those kinds of stuff. So from this, it was a natural way in the future to get involved into governance and especially in optimism.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely hear you on that front and right on. All right, and so now you're a delegate at Optimism representing LTV, of course. What is the hardest thing about being a delegate?
Well, I think that the hardest thing is that we don't know how to do it. Like there are no guides. There is no blueprint of what one should do, how should it work, and especially as the space is evolving so rapidly, we need to adapt, and we need to take into account that things that we know today are not those that we will know a year from now. So so that's one thing, like simply trying to understand what to do and which directions to take. But the other thing is that this is really like the whole governance aspect is really strongly underappreciated. People do not realize how much time and other resources it requires. Like I like to say that governance is the most important thing we are trying to figure out in Web3 and crypto in general, and I absolutely believe it, because it's not just about crypto. Like governance allows us to experiment with politics, with decision making, with coordination, with spreading ideas and gathering support for those ideas. Right now, it's like I believe that we are very, very early, and we have to do it right. Like it's easy for us to mess up and basically fail experimenting on this. So that's something that I'm worried about, and but that's also something that makes me so passionate about it.
Yeah, really interesting take. I think most of the delegates that have asked this question are saying the lack of information, or sorry, not the lack of information, but like the sheer volume of information that's available, and you have to keep on top of. But in terms of like proposals and things happening, whereas you put the other side of the coin forward and say, there is no like how to in order to become a delegate. There's no guide. There's no kind of like best practice, at least so far. It's kind of like still emerging and we're still figuring it out. So really interesting take to hear.
Yeah, and actually, I understand where it's coming from, because there is an abundance of information that we have to digest in order to be able to participate in governance, especially with all those different ecosystems and all those different DAOs. You have to understand like what's happening, what's like the vibe in the specific DAO. However, I compare it to, like, for me, seeing it in a bigger picture, I compare it to traditional politics. And especially for me right now, when we are recording this, we are during an election period in Poland, where I live. And what I'm observing is basically politicians are trying to DDoS us as citizens with information. So like comparing this to what we have in Web3 and crypto governance right now, we have an absolute luxury with being able actually to really make up our minds. And this space, of course, there are different, there are different things happening. Like people are trying to use already DAOs and governance for their own like agenda, but it's still very amateurish and very early compared to what we have even in the local elections in traditional world. And I expect it to also happen in Web3. If we are ever if we are going to succeed, if what we are building is going to be valuable, those mechanisms will also be be all around our governance systems, and we need to kind of prepare for that. And the greatest thing about governance is that we actually have the opportunity to experiment. We can't do this in a traditional world. The stake is too high. The barrier of entry is too high. Like basically, it's too complicated. It's too mature and um, hard to grasp for anybody to really try to experiment with it. You can only just ride this wave. And in crypto, in Web3, we actually have the opportunity to think things through again and again, and to try things out and check what's working, what's not. Sometimes do even some crazy things, which I like the most, like some crazy experiment for some crazy ideas. It's a huge opportunity, and I'm super excited about it.
Mhm. Yeah, like I am. And speaking of, people trying to use DAOs for their own agenda and, the need for people to hold certain values, I think, in order to experiment with a positive mindset. What are some core values that you think a delegate should have in order to be successful in this new era of governance within DAOs?
Well, first of all, of course, integrity. But in order to be able to have integrity, you need to figure out like why are you here? What are you trying to achieve? And it's not always an easy task. In L2BIT, it's easier for us because like we have this special role. We self-defined ourselves as this public goods company that is an independent watchdog for Ethereum community, and we like self-defined our presence in all those different L2 ecosystems as being the Ethereum ecosystem stewards that are working for the future of L2 rollup centric world. So we do have an agenda. And by the way, for anybody listening, if you go to l2beat.com website and you click on the governance tab in the top, you can see the values that we are that we self-define for ourselves and the approach that we are taking. And with that, it's kind of easier to find out which way should we go in any particular decision. However, it's like it's easy just in theory. In practice, you always have to uh, be aware that people are trying to push you somehow in their directions, and it's absolutely okay. Like it's literally their job to do, and you you have to be dedicated to it. It's not just like it's not a hobby. It's not something we do as a side gig, something at least here. But also, I believe that in governance in crypto, especially in the L2 ecosystems, where the stake is really high, and especially in the future, it is going to be much higher even. We need to take it seriously. So, one, I would say integrity with all the things that I said after that. And the second one, I would say professionalism. We have to take it seriously. If we have all those, like both two things, then the rest is something that we have to figure out. Like we don't have recipes for that yet.
Right on. And on the practical side, what are some best practices that one could have as a delegate to, to adhere to this professionality and integrity that you spoke?
Well, so how I see it, how I understand the role of delegate, like we are kind of being representatives, similar to like parliamentary members in the traditional politics, maybe scale down to what our space is right now, but the job is almost the same or at least similar. So like one thing that we have to do is we have to pay attention and be aware of what's happening. Try to be knowledgeable even in the domains that we are not necessarily experts in. We should find someone who has this expertise and get their advice or at least their opinion. And second one is I think openness. We should be open to first of all to discuss those proposals, ideas, directions with other fellow delegates because we are in it together. It's like not a single player game where we have some mission to finish. It's a coordination game where we have to do things together because otherwise it won't work. So we have to be open for the other fellow delegates to discuss things and to get their opinion and to figure out what's the best approach for us together to take, but also to be open to the community because, as I said, we are representatives. We should be allowing the community to have their voices heard by being the delegates. I hope this answers the question at least roughly.
To an extent, I assume you like um my interpretation of that would be to kind of like be in touch with the constituents that delegate tokens to you and other interested parties, in the sense that, be accessible, right? And be in communication with the people delegating tokens to you, because in a sense you represent them and their interests in the DAO.
Yeah, but also it's important that it's like we are not just proxies. I said we are representatives. We are like, I believe that it's okay to be opinionated. It's okay to have a strong opinion on certain matters, and it's okay to disagree even with people who delegated their voting power to me. Like, they are always free to redelegate it somewhere else if they don't agree with me, but like, I don't have to compromise on my values or my approach or the things that I believe in order to satisfy people who delegate tokens to me. Like, I represent something. And also we as L2BEAT, we represent something. We have our opinions. We know what we want in at least in some aspects that we like tend to expertise in. And we are not compromising this just for some voting power. Like, we are okay to be the representative for others if they feel like we represent what they value, but we are not flexible to change our, like, of course we are open to discussion, but it's not like that we will always do whatever pleases the people who delegate tokens to us. We don't think about ourselves like that.
Love that. And in terms of making a decision as a delegate, do you have a set framework on how you assess proposals, or how do you make up your mind before you vote on something?
So first of all, let's start with those values that we have listed. And they may seem vague, but living with them for quite some time already, I believe that they are pretty pretty concrete. So we start with that, and we in every decision we try to be consistent with those values. But in order to be able to do that, what I have to do is to basically get the most information I can, both from the forums, like simply listening to what others have to say, but also reaching out directly to people who might have some valuable opinion on certain matters. So, especially, for example, I'm not an expert in economical models, but I know people who are. And, anytime that I have to make a decision that has some economical aspect to it, I try to reach out to people who are more knowledgeable than me in order to get their opinion on the subject matter. But also, it's important to take into account the discussion going around a certain topic, because I believe that it's important to think about governance as not just voting. Like, voting is just like this optional step, but the whole process, which starts with some kind of an idea generation, then gathering support, making some kind of a consensus, or at least like figuring out what our decision on a given subject is. Then there is voting, but then there's also an execution. So when deciding on whether something should be pushed through or rather rejected, I also think about, okay, how is it going to be implemented? How is it going to be executed on? What consequences will it have? Like, and what consequences will it have if it won't be executed properly? What consequences will there be if something gets voted on, passes, and then fails? And who is responsible for making it succeed in the future? It's especially important in terms of proposals, like grant proposals, because I see it kind of like a VC, how VCs think. So, like, at least the good ones, they don't just choose which project to fund. This is, of course, a very important step, but it's just the beginning of the story. Like, when they fund any project, now the story begins, and their mission is to make this project succeed. And this is also like, this is the same with my thinking about voting on proposals. Like, how can I help? How can I make this proposals succeed, not just in a vote, but also afterwards.
Yeah, and speaking of grants and VC-like thinking, you are also part of the Grants Council, and I'd like for you to talk about that experience. You know, how did that came to be? What is the most challenging and the most rewarding thing of being in the Grants Council? You know, in short, you don't have to go through.
The story is simple, and it just happened by accident, almost. So when I joined L2BEAT, Chris Katcher was already involved in the tooling committee, and this was basically the first thing that I was helping him with. So basically analyzing proposals for Optimism grants in the tooling committee and helping make our mind on those proposals. And when this finished, like we naturally progressed towards being a part of the grants council, and I'm happy that it happened like that, because like it was a great experience. I've been involved in grants in the traditional world also for quite a long time, and I believe that yeah, like seeing it being built from the ground up was a very thoughtful and interesting experience.
Nice to hear that. And taking a step back and seeing the overall state of Optimus Collective as it is right now, how do you see, like on a high level, how do you view its governance, right? What are some things that we are strong at? What are some things that we are lacking? Some things that we need to experiment more with, you know, just on a high level things.
So on a high level, I think that of course optimism is very strong in terms of community and the values. Like the collective knows what optimism is like stands for and what optimism is about. They know the importance of retroactive public goods funding as a way to sustain the whole space. The way to figure out sustainable business models for free software, which is like a super important task in general, I believe. It's like funding public goods, something that we in traditional world, that's what we have governments for. So we are actually like trying to define nation states in this way. But like this is the high level view. What we what is our very strong aspect, but also like the weakest spot is the reliance on the foundation in the governance. So how I see it, like the approach that Optimism takes is the foundation is bootstrapping the governance, which is great. Like foundation does the great job doing that. Like all the experiments we have of all the different approaches that we have in Optimism, like I absolutely believe that they did a great job with figuring out, like experimenting, structuring, discussing different approaches, taking feedback, learning on the experiments, not just experiment for the sake of experiment, but actually learning on the experiments. So foundation is doing a great job, and I think that it will be super challenging, super hard to somehow decentralize it in the future. We got used too much to foundation basically running things for us. We got too used to foundation being like the like our parents to decide on things. If there is any conflict in the collective, foundation steps in and solves this conflict. Because like conflict solving is a very hard task in any community, and foundation actually doing great job also running workshops on the conflict resolution. But the dependence and the reliance on the foundation right now in the collective is very strong. And I think like what we need to do is try to get things into our hands, not wait on the foundation to do things for us and to figure out things for us, but basically self-organize and try to experiment on our own. And this already happened, for example, in RPGF2. So with RPGF2, we had to somehow organize ourselves on assessing the projects because it was an impossible task for any single batch holder to assess all the projects. And we did. Like we crowdsourced the information for assessment. We shared the like our assessment rubrics, something that the foundation is actually right now using in RPGF3, but this was coming from the bottom up, like it wasn't enforced by the foundation, and I loved this experiment, and I hope to see more of those like things coming from the very bottom of the collective up to the top. We need to build our own communities.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd love to see more community-led initiatives as well, and not rely as much on the foundation, although they are doing a great job, as you mentioned. All right, and what do you see be kind of like the OP collective in a few years from now, and what are some of the hardest things that we need to overcome to get there? Again, high level and difficult questions, I know, but like ideally, where do you want to see us?
You know, of course, like the only answer is it depends, and that we don't really know. But I would expect so. First of all, we are waiting for the super chain vision to get more concrete and to actually go into life. And I believe that this will happen, and we will see the chains in the super chain emerging into like one huge body of coordinated organs working together, and this will be the biggest challenge for the collective, how to manage this and how to stay relevant in this new reality. This is basically the story of law of chains that we've been discussing for some time already. And I believe that we will be discussing this even further in the coming reflection period. This is also the story of the future of governance, which again has been discussed and will be discussed in the reflection period. We need to find ourselves and define our role as a collective in this future, where there will be a multitude of important players having a stake and having also a say in where when Optimism and Superchain is heading to. And it will not just be governance. It's important to realize that like the decision making won't be only in governance. It will be also in the development teams, in the business teams. Like there will be many different players that will have to cooperate and work together to get those things right. So I think that 1 to 2 years from now, in the OP collective, the discussion will be much more important, and discussion between delegates, between stakeholders. Right now, it's mostly us discussing some things on the forum and us discussing with the foundation communicating some stuff, us providing feedback to the foundation. I think that in the near future, we'll have the network of different stakeholders and participants and actors in this ecosystem, and we will have to somehow navigate this new reality.
All right. And speaking of stakeholders and speaking of delegates, is there a delegate on your mind that, even though they are very active and they're contributing, they haven't received as much voting power or delegations?
Ooh, so the one that I wanted to give shout out to actually has a lot of voting power. It's Lefteris, but I think that it's like he's kind of a role model of what a delegate should be. Um, there are very like I would look for like people from the communities, like Sidlatam, like Eternal DAO, like Bankless DAO. Uh, they are probably maybe they're not underrepresented, but there are a lot of people there that have very valuable and very interesting views, and we should give them more platform to speak out, basically.
Yeah, definitely agree. That's kind of like part of the purpose of this podcast as well. All right, and going.
And sorry, if I were to speak about one person, I would say Gona, my fellow Grants Council reviewer. He's a great guy, and I think that he's underrepresented in the governance. He's super valuable to the whole collective, and he should receive more praise.
Yeah, definitely agree on that one as well. Much love to Ghana. All right, and going to the broader collective, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to, regardless of whether they are an individual, an organization, a team, even members of the foundation? Is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to for their contributions?
Everybody. I love them all. I can't choose any single particular individual. One thing that I think we should. I would like to praise all the ambassadors that are, spreading the word. All the people that are actually spreading the word and discussing the ideas and the values that stand behind Optimism and Optimism Collective. So yeah, I don't want to point out any single individual. I love you all, and we have a lot of work in front of us. So let's coordinate and let's work together.
Wise answer. All right, and to close things off, now is your time to share on places that anybody could learn more about you, about L2Beat. If you have a delegate communication thread, let us know. And of course, I'll include the links in the description of the video.
Yeah, we do have the delegate communication thread, but if you'd like to know more about L2Beat, definitely go to L2Beat.com and come to our Discord and talk to us. Find us at conferences. Come to Istanbul for DevConnect and reach out to us. Talk to us directly. We love that, and that's the best way to get to know about us. But also, I'd like to recommend you joining our L2Beat office hours for Optimism, which are every Tuesday, 3 p.m. UTC. And we are available for a whole hour every week to discuss Optimism related stuff. And you don't have to have concrete questions or issues to discuss. You can simply jump on and discuss Optimism, what's happening recently. We are there, and I believe that this is super important to have it established so that we have those spaces where we can exchange ideas and discuss stuff, because discourse and forum in general, it has its values, but similar as Usenet in the past, it has also its drawbacks. It's hard to engage there, especially casually. Hard to just drop some small thoughts and not to turn the discussion into meaningless, never-ending thread. So we need those other spaces. So I would absolutely recommend you coming to our office hours. Also, what I recommend is basically gather in the real world. We're next to every big conference that we are participating in, we organize governance branches or breakfasts. Come to us, discuss with us all things governance. We need to exchange ideas more. We need to know what's happening in other ecosystems, but also in other corners of our own ecosystem. And the last thing, in this spirit, the last thing that I would like to somehow pitch is during L2 days in Istanbul, there will be a whole day governance related workshop where the idea is simply to exchange ideas and to discuss stuff across different ecosystems. And I absolutely encourage you to get involved in that, even if just to listen. But also, if you wish to come and share some ideas with us, you're more than welcome. For the details are not published yet, but if you'd like to learn about it, feel free to reach out to me directly on Telegram, on Discord, on Twitter, wherever you like.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for that. Of course, I'll include the links as I always do in the description, and for any more information, you can reach out to Krzysztof directly. All right, and that brings us to the end of the episode. Krzysztof, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I loved it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thanks again, everyone, for listening.